Spirituality, but the subtitle for this class is Reverend Dr. Julianne Takes a Shower. And y'all will see why I say that in a minute. But I want to show this clip first. I always start off this class by, I just kind of want to go around the table for a minute, asking, what do you know about Africa? Yeah.
To be honest, very little.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a broad question.
But when you think of Africa, what comes to mind?
That it's a huge country, that it's filled with all different kind of interesting people, the history of, a lot of other countries going in and, ripping it off, all the different types of religions. I don't know, it's a big country.
Good. Carmen?
I think of mineral passages, I think of the diaspora, I think of going back to, I think back, because we go down to the Blacks and Wax Museum often in Baltimore, so spending time in there and think of what used to happen on the slave ships and how people used to die as a form of getting out of,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to offer their opinion? So, most of what...
I like to. Particularly with Africa, I think of the kingdoms of Mali. I think of the nations in the north, the deserts, the Tuaregs, the desert people. I think of Nigeria and Igbo. I think of the great nations that rose in Ife. I think of the beautiful cities, the metalworking, the brassworking, the mastery of metals, the mastery of arts. I think of the trade routes that they had between the Middle East and Asia. I think of their connections, especially with Egypt. They had great trade with Ireland, as far as Ireland, with ambers and golds, things that they mined from their places. I think of the Congo. I think of the people of the Bantu languages. I think of Tanzania. I think of Shaka Zulu, his strength, his courage. I think of the kings of Ethiopia, even from the Queen of Sheba, and also down to World War II, when World War I, I believe it was, when they fought against the Italians with sticks, spears, and archeries. And they won against them, just because of their knowledge of the natural land and the landscape that was available to them. I think of the tribes that have warred with each other, the tribes that had moved across the deserts and the forests. I think of the long history of the Muslims as they crossed those deserts from the Middle East and inhabited large swaths of North Africa and East Africa as well. So it's a lot. It entails a long history.
Have you been to Louisa? Never been to Louisa? Louisa's a township in Puerto Rico outside of San Juan. It has a Yoruba flavor to it.
I've heard. I drive by it. Never liked it.
Yeah, when we visited the little food places there, and bought some art.
All in his phone. Getting the call in his phone music.
Well, most of what the Western world period knows about Africa is through the lens of Hollywood and also through the lens of colonizers that purposefully wanted to diminish Africa. African spirituality, African culture, to make the statement that it's okay to enslave these people. And in doing so, by diminishing them, it was a justification. When I was in San Juan, they had outside of the Basilica, Ponce de Leon's grave is there, tomb rather, and he brought I think it's a document of justification to the New World. The justification was that the Catholic Church owns all the souls in the world. He's the caretaker of the world. And then, I'll tell you this later, he passed a papal bull saying that it was okay. That he, by virtue of the fact that he represents God on earth, there's certain people that you can subjugate. And that opened up a new history and chapter in the world. But let me show you this film first. So you can see. This is, absolutely shocking when you look at it.
It's a way of showing how large the continent really is. So, on a lot of maps, you'll see Africa looking kind of tinier than it really should be, at least compared to when you look at it on a globe. And that just has to do with the challenges of getting things to appear right on a flat map. Now, the Earth is round, of course, and when you try to put things onto a flat map, they end up getting squished, especially towards the equator. And the equator runs right through Africa. So places like Africa will get shrunk down kind of, I guess you could say, unfairly in size, while places further to the north, like Greenland, or on some maps you'll see Antarctica, which just looks massive when it runs all the way along the south edge of the map.
United States.
And those places are really way bigger than they actually should be. So, here's how this image works. Now, behind the blue paint that you see in the outline of Africa, there are a lot of countries that will actually fill up the entire continent. Countries that don't normally belong in Africa. So I'm going to erase them little by little, and we'll see what we can reveal. Alright, so I'm going to start erasing this part. And can you guess which country this is? We have the United States of America. The United States of America is drawn to scale here, and it would fit right here in this part of Africa. And that kind of surprised me because I had no idea that the United States was about 1/4 of the size, or even 1/5 of the size of Africa. It looks like on a normal map that it's about half the size. Let's keep on erasing and see what we find. Okay, let's erase along the southern part here. And, yep, here's China. Yeah, China would fit in this entire bottom part of Africa, with room left over for Japan to spare. And Japan isn't labeled, but it's the one right here in yellow. Okay, I see another country peeking out here. So let's erase that, and it's Italy. It's our boot-shaped friend. And it looks like Italy is right where Egypt should be. And when we erase a little bit more, there's all of Eastern Europe right there that would fit in this part of Africa.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Let's erase a little bit more. And here's India. India would fit right where the Horn of Africa is. Now let's see what Madagascar is hiding. And it is the United Kingdom, or England. The entire island of Madagascar is about the same size as England. Okay, let's see what the north of Africa is hiding here. You have Germany, then France, and Spain all together. So Africa can hold a lot of countries. It's the second largest continent in the world after all, and the first largest is Asia. And that's just by its size. By the number of people that are in Africa, it actually also comes in second place, just again right behind Asia. So I just wanted to show you that. I think it's really cool. And I hope that you are as amazed and impressed, and that your mind was blown as much as mine was.
Any comments?
Cool.
It's
like almost all the world fits inside Africa. I think there's some spiritual significance to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the year 2050, 1 in every 4 people will be African because 70% of their population is under, I think, 40 or something like that. No, 25. Yeah. So, now, it's hard to say that Africa has a specific spirituality. But there's some general things. But first, let me go over this with you. I have here the Vatican owns everything. And on 1302, Pope Boniface VIII issued the papal bull called Unum Sanctum. Aside from all that was written, the bull ends with the following statement. Furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. In other words, the Pope owns everything. Pope Nicholas issued another papal bull, Dum Diversas. On the 18th of June, 1452, it authorizes King Alfonso of Portugal to reduce any Saracens, meaning Muslims, pagans, and any other unbelievers to perpetual slavery. St. Thomas Aquinas said that slavery was instituted by God as punishment for sin. Thus my statement about St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, it's obvious you don't like it. You know,
But he was drummed into our head, right, Doc? Right when we were in Catholic school. Aquinas this, Aquinas that. There were 2 people defined the Catholic Church in terms of thought. It's Aquinas and Augustine. It was not until 1965 that the Church reversed this decision. It should be noted that sacred art such as the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and many other works commissioned by popes, European royalty, depicted biblical figures, including Jesus and his wife, to show that Africans and others were not connected to God. I went to an art show, it was an exhibit by National Gallery of Art, some newly unearthed Egyptian artifacts. And they had a death mask of Ramses II there. You know who he is, right? He's the guy that was hot on Moses' trail. Moses. You will run and play a great role there. Anyway, so this mask is like this big. Huge African nose, huge African lips. And so I said to the person I was with, I said, at least we know what one person in the Bible looked like. And this guy, who was a Norwegian press guy, he said to me, you'll see, that's not what his actual face looked like. What they were trying to do is show that he had the divine features. Then I looked at it, how stupid is this guy right here? So I said, let me get this straight. Now you're telling me that these are divine features? He said, well, that's what the Egyptians thought. And so we had a good exchange, but that's an actual death mask. And I say that because for much of going back the last 500 or 600 years, the whole image of Africa has been distorted. You have to remember that the first people to come in contact with Europeans, with Africans, were not educated people. So naturally, they would look at them through a filter of a jaundiced filter. Chancellor Williams, who was my instructor at Howard University, wrote a book called The Destruction of African Civilization. You haven't seen it? And so these Europeans went to ask this king, and I think it was the Maui king, if they could go through his empire and look for something. And he kept them waiting for days. And they saw all these old, crusty guys, dusty, coming in because they had been walking. And they became agitated, and said, how could he keep us waiting for these type of people? And what they didn't realize is that the king had summoned all the chiefs, all the kingdoms, to get their opinion on allowing them to walk through the kingdom. And they didn't realize they were witnessing democracy. So what does all this have to do with the spirituality? When we were with Julianne and I were with the king of all of voodoo, and he said that acceptance and tolerance are one one of the hallmarks of African spirituality. You would never know that, because nobody's ever told us that story, that's the basis for all of the spirituality on the continent. They have that one thing, that one item in common, regardless of whatever gods they worship. So, when you look at the culture of Africa, you can't separate it from the spirituality. Because the king told us that voodoo is the blueprint for organizing life in the family, in the community, the government structures. So in a spiritual context, you can't separate the government from the church from the government. Because if the king makes a ruling or president makes a ruling, ultimately he's going to check in with a spiritual leader, because it's the blueprint. Now, the major things that items or tenets that African spirituality holds would be this: a belief in a divine, most of them, genderless God. And voodoo is the basis for African spirituality. It is the oldest spiritual tradition here, but I really don't use that word voodoo. It's actually Valdoon. It became voodoo in the Western Hemisphere, and voodoo is more or less a Hollywood creation, and the word took hold. There is no, in Haiti, parts of the Caribbean, it is called voodoo now, but in Africa, it's called Valdoon. And Valdoon simply means God. So, under Valdoon, Julianne's a God. I'm a God. You're a God. Everybody's a God.
Can you spell that?
Vodun. So, there's a divine genderless God. You find that in the Yoruba tradition. A remote God as well. That all of creation is sacred. I think the king used the analogy that if one of his ancestors fell and died by a tree, they buried him where he fell because they believe that's a sacred spot. Now that tree is sacred, even more sacred, because it's taking on and nourishing off of an ancestor. The other thing, that to access the remote God, you have to go through saints. You want to speak to that a little bit?
I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit down. I need to sit down.
Do whatever you want.
Thank you.
Underneath.
I wanna bump it quick.
And just while she's sitting down, so the saints, where did that concept come from? The Yoruba believe Christianity took it from them. Because spirituality had to migrate out of Africa.
Well, when it comes to the use of the word saints, from a Western perspective, those are words that are used after colonial contact with Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes to specifically the Yoruba tradition,
Colonial contact
yeah.
with Christianity.
Mm-hmm. So in the sense of like, in the process of having colonialization come through and, taking slaves from Africa, moving them across the transatlantic slave trade, creating systems of philosophies that put down African bodies in order to make them pliable to slavery and pliable to the manifestations of those social structures that Western Europe was attempting to disseminate across the world. It was in the Caribbean, it was in diasporic locations where that word saints itself was introduced, because saints comes from the Catholic tradition or comes from Christianity. But the concept, the philosophical concept of intermediaries between oneself and one creator spirit or one God had different words in Africa at that time.
Just to go back, saints, it is a Christian concept, but I'll finish my statement. In Valdoon, they're called Loas.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, they're called Orishas. So the Uni King's statement, and Uni King is the king of the Yoruba. He said the concept of the word church, the saints, all are rooted in Yoruba, translated into Greek, and then into Latin.
Yes.
So, thus the concept of saints.
So So I want to talk about the anthropology of African spirituality. Scientists date the emergence of human life to a time in Old Divide Gorge, Tanzania, where fossils show that the Homo erectus, a fossil called Lucy, was found, and she is considered to be the first actual human. So, by logic, we trace the emergence of the cosmology to that place in that time, where people contemplate their relationship to their environment and their relationship to a higher power. So we can date humanity back to Africa, we can date spirituality to Africa. The 53 countries within the continent each have a variation on, as Dr. J has indicated, the spirituality of Oshun, Yemaya, Olokun, Olodumare, Igun, Elegua, Oya, Shango, Ibeji. All of these entities have presented themselves to worshippers, and their presence among the people assists in every aspect of life. When we met the king from Benin, he described a creation mythology very well developed and so close to what we understand to be the story in Genesis that just by logic we can trace Genesis back to Adam. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the parts of life in Africa which are governed. I asked the king when he came, what is the worldview of Vodun? What is the worldview of Benin as it springs from Vodun? I was not puzzled, but a little quizzical, because the current status of Africa is that of a colonized.
She said a little quizzical.
Well, it was funny to me to.
She was very animated in that meeting.
I thought I was polite and demure. I do demure very well, thank you.
I didn't get to the
So just recognizing that the governments are founded on the principles that the Orishas set forth. And so I want to talk a little bit about Vodun as a tradition has many different names. Condomble, Palo, Lukumi, Hoodoo, Voodoo, Santeria, Dagara. Each of those traditions may have different worship styles, different worship practices, but as Vodun has spread out from the continent, around the world they are called by different names. And so you will find a deity named Yemaya in Santeria and Condomble. You will find an entity named Shango, and Shango is a male deity who governs protection, warfare, strategy. He is a symbol of male physicality, and so for those who worship in a, for lack of a better word, a cult or a organization around Shango, you would see the colors white and red or white and orange. And you usually see the symbolism of Shango with a spear or a machete. typically worshipers will ask for the entity or the deity to come forward to assist them on a mission where they need help. And there is a female counterpart to Shango, Oya, who is the goddess of the wind, swift movement, swift change. And when you invoke her, just as with the angels, with the Norse gods, as with the Hindu deities, and with the angels, they must show up. Their assistance is invaluable, and what tends to happen is that they move around you to organize events, to move people into place so that things work out in the way that you would have them work out. I want to start with the entity that I very humbly embody from time to time, and her name is Yemaya. Her color is blue, and she traditionally is seen as the mother of all things. All of the fish in the sea, all of the whales and the dolphins and the sharks, the mermaids, the birds, the love of all things comes through her. She is the mother of the other deities. And as Santeria and all the other traditions spread and contact with the Europeans became, I don't want to say problematic, but as it became problematic, the European traditions began to adapt the imagery and the names and the symbolism so that the religions are syncretized, and that's an important word, syncretized to the existence and the work of the Orishas. Mm-hmm. So, and Richard, you may be able to help me to identify a Catholic saint who is identical to Yemaya, if you can think of one.
Her name is La Virgen de la Regla, or the Virgin of the Rule. She's associated with the Virgin Mary. You often see her depicted as a black Madonna, and she'll be over a ship or she'll be over the sea. And oftentimes the iconography surrounding her is a little bit different than what you see with, for example, Oshun, whose colors are yellow and white. Mm-hmm. And for Oshun, hers is the Virgin of Charity, or La Virgen de la Caridad, the Virgin of Compassion. So you'll see different iconographies, and sometimes people can mistake them for each other if they're not aware of the color coordination. So for Yemaya, it would be the Virgin of the Rule. And you can take a look on Google or wherever you want, but there's definitely books for it.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. The color for Yemaya is blue, and I would also point out that the color for the Archangel Michael is blue. There are several entities within the tradition of ascended masters who work on the color spectrum. So I would advise you or suggest that you look to the color symbolism of all of the entities to understand that they're working along the same lines. So Yemaya is the mother of the ocean and the mother of all things, and we look at Mary and the symbology of motherhood as having been taken from or adapted from the Orisha tradition. Interestingly enough, the mermaid on the Starbucks cup is Yemaya. The CEO of Starbucks is a Santeria practitioner. What the purpose of this talk is to dispel the idea that Vodun and the other traditions are evil. There is very little in the universe that is intended to harm others. It is part of the evolution of mankind to adapt away from use of spirituality to harm others. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I need a financial blessing and I ask the goddess Oshun, who is also the goddess of the rivers and the lakes and the streams, when I think of Oshun, who also has the color orange and gold as part of her symbology, I think of apples and pears and potatoes and rice and wheat and those provisions that come in to the home as food, as sustenance, as money. I am acquainted with people who worship Oshun, whose idea is to always have an altar for her. And a lot of the practitioners, most practitioners keep an altar with items that are intended to appease and support the relationship with the Orisha. So the symbology on an altar for Oshun would be 5 oranges, a small vial of cinnamon with honey, other items, fresh flowers, a small plate of food. Another entity who's present with me frequently is Papa Legba. We have an experience with Papa Legba. The more recent traditions like voodoo and hoodoo show him with a hat and a pipe and kind of tattered clothes, sitting. He has a cane and there's usually a dog with him. He is an extremely powerful version of Elegba, who is an African god of the highest order. When there is an urgent need, Papa Legba will come. And Papa Legba will come and lovingly, all of the Orishas work in love. They work in support. So, in a vision, I'm jumping around a little bit, please forgive me. And I guess I need to also say that in addition to having been initiated into Vodun by the king, I also have had the good fortune to have been initiated into the Tao, which is Taoism, and Shakabuku into a Japanese form of Buddhism, and then of course having had the Christian baptism many years ago. So being open to all of the traditions is, I believe, a hallmark of our interfaith walk. So going back to Papa Elegla, when there is an urgent need and he shows up, expect to receive what you have asked for. Expect to step into the reality that what was no longer exists and what will be is part of a new truth. So he changes the existence around you in a way that is conferred directly by all there is. Mary, Kuan Yin, Yemaya, all work together as mothers of all of humanity. When Avalokiteshvara went from India into Eastern Asia and changed from man to woman, the tradition of worship altered and changed, but the point of Kwanmin is compassion. And that is the same element of existence embodied by Yamada, compassion. So all of this is to say that the traditions that we worship all stem from Africa. They all started in Africa because humanity started in Africa.
Major tenets from other traditions, for example, we all know laugh at this, the primordial sound that created existence. What is that? You know what it is in Yoruba and Pecan? It's yo. And chi, the internal energy. In Pecan it's called ka. In Baldwin, I believe it's called yi. Is that interesting? So all of those concepts that you find all around the world in other spiritualities, the importance of ancestors. You know, in early years in the seminary, we were taught that that was Native American, that was South American. Ancestor veneration is, I would say, the cornerstone of African spirituality. And you have to go back sometimes and clean up the karma of ancestors. Well, say you had an ancestor that was a thief. That attaches to your lineage, and somehow you have to clean that up. Ways of cleaning up can be through placing one of your family members into a holy circle, priesthood. Distinguish yourself in battle, do some great feat, and then there's a meeting of the council of elders, and they declare that karmic debt void.
It's like that Catholic praying for the souls of purgatory.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So, when you look at, again, African spirituality in a broad context, as you said, you have to see it as tenets, rites, rituals, parts of cosmology, theologies moving through the world out of the migration. And there's this clip, I couldn't find it, but again, the only king, the word church in Cuban, it came from uche, translated into Greek, community, church. Because all church means is community. So, community, communion, uche. So, Julianne, I want you to speak a little more about can I show them your initiation?
Would you? Thank you.
Okay. Well, before I show you the initiation, I want to listen to about 10 minutes of the king speaking, which was really illuminating. So I should tell you a little more about him. He is 80 million voodoo practitioners worldwide. And he is the spiritual head of those 80 million practitioners. He's the king of the city of Ouidah, which is in Benin. And Ouidah is actually the epicenter. Is the epicenter of voodoo. And his lineage goes back to the 1450. And his name is Ona Dagbo Onan. And Ona means owner of the water. And he told me he has a feminine side because you can't own the water without having a feminine side. And I asked him how far his lineage went back in terms of being the owner of the water. He said, how old is the ocean? So his lineage goes back. But the, voodoo actually started in Benin. And it was a revelation to a woman that moved to a city called, a kingdom called Alada. And she's the matriarch of the royal family there. I want you to hear a little bit of the opening Because in this opening clip of this interfaith dialogue with the king, you'll see a ritual, a libation ritual. The purpose of this dialogue with His Majesty, Ona Dabo Onan, is to better understand Baldun or Voodoo and African spirituality in general. He is from Rita Benin and the spiritual leader of 80 million Baldun and Voodoo worshippers worldwide. That's me. Libation. There are other people in the room.
Okay. I'm just telling you for love. Listen to the prayer.
He didn't really ask him to do that, he ordered him to do that.
If you want to address His Majesty, I think you prefer to dialogue. And I'm going to start with a few questions just to kind of get us in a good thought process. And I asked this question earlier today, and I think that it best put His Majesty in perspective for me, even though I've done a lot of reading and a lot of YouTube. So I've seen many hours in the last week on YouTube, and very interesting. The question I asked was, how long back or back does your legacy go? Your lineage? As a king and of course as the high priest. And his answer was very interesting. Could you pose that question about the lineage?
No, the thing was, after the name of myself for me, it was the first, second time I heard that from the Majesty. I was saying in the name of the when the sea, the sea, the ocean is dead, that's when he's dead, you don't know what they, you see. Because there is a place of Clement is the mover of the earth and the mover of the water point. So Clement is the sea. That's what he's saying. It's a sea, the sea. So, ocean. When the ocean was there, when the spirit was there.
Non. Qu'est-ce qui signifie la mère qui met enfant au monde?
So, no, it's the sea, you know the sea.
He's speaking the phone,
Now,
I'm going to switch to French.
there's a sea, mother of the sea. So the mother is the one who makes the sea in life, basically. This is the come from the mother, basically. So the spirit is a woman's spirit. So they don't know where. You cannot tell them this year, like 40, 42, 40, no. Cannot say.
And that resonated with me because, as you all know, as I explained, and you don't know, I'm the director of Interfaith Seminary in New York, and we do teach African spirituality there. And quite often here in Western society, we are confused about how certain traditions have impacted other traditions and how we end up where we are today in the state of the world with affairs and in religion. So, just to go right to the heart of the matter of His Majesty is how in trying to correct the Western image of Bowden that's been misrepresented in the media and misunderstood globally. That is a very old spiritual tradition and closely related to Christianity, in that they believe in a major supreme being remote in the intercession of saints. And how is he trying to correct that image, and what does he want us to know so we can inform our communities?
That's what I'm speaking, okay?
I knew it wasn't
The president of the union does not want high-ranking officials to speak French. He wants them to speak in their native tongue.
Okay, the fellow was saying that he preferred that because she speaks French, she explained it and he didn't think she missed out that. Okay. Thank you. Well, there's one something. No, I'm like, il peut faire, mais je l'ai dit, comme vous êtes ensemble, et que peut-être depuis des temps, vous menez des réflexions par rapport à ça, que ça serait recevoir les questions de vous, l'interprétation de vous, ça va se rapprocher plus de ceux qui vous réfléchissez depuis. Et là, on saura véritablement quelle approche de réponse donner.
The things that as I am working on these issues related to what we are discussing here, that perhaps I can gather translate. I'm not sure at all, but let's try. Let's see.
Question was, how are the major workers I've read online and I've been informed, because that is trying to put and cast Baldwin in its proper role historically and as a high African spiritual tradition, much older than most spiritual traditions. So when I read 10,000 years ago, how, what steps was he taking and what would he like us to know so we can go back and inform our communities about Baldwin and put it in the proper perspective.
Donc, la question qui est en train de poser, c'est quel rôle et quel message vous êtes en train de transmettre au monde et aux endroits où vous visitez à propos de l'histoire et des origines du vaudou, afin de changer l'image qui, dans des pays occidentaux, on a, qui sont des images très souvent détournées, qui ne sont pas des images vraies, à propos de ce qu'est le vaudou, en tant qu'une tradition qui est très ancienne et qui est aussi vient même avant donc, des religions qu'on connaît aujourd'hui. Donc, quel serait le message que vous auriez à passer ces propos pour qu'on puisse transmettre ça aussi aux jeunes Canadiens pour changer cette image?
Je le remercie pour cette approche.
Pour
dire que ça rentre dans la ligne droite.
It goes straight forward.
Tracé par l'UNESCO depuis des décennies. tracé, les doit être tracé par l'UNESCO depuis plusieurs décennies.
To trace a straight line that has been done also by UNESCO. UNESCO.
Donc le dialogue interreligieux, le dialogue interculturel.
A cultural and interreligious dialogue that UNESCO has been doing that as well.
He's saying UNESCO from the United Nations has taken an interest.
Félicite par rapport à cette question.
He congratulates you for asking this question.
Pour avoir reconnu que le vaudou fait partie des religions anciennes, primordiales.
Because you recognize that the Voodoo is part of these old religions and world religions that has a long tradition, a long history.
C'est vrai, quand les missionnaires avaient foulé le sol africain, le sol,
It's true that other missionaries, the Christian missionaries, went to Africa and dig into the African soil.
la première religion rencontrée, quand on prend le Bénin, ancien Gaoul en particulier, c'est le vaudou.
That the first religion that these missionaries found there, it was the Voodoo. But they took that whole name and they started
Pour répondre à l'un des principes chers au vaudou, une valeur reconnue au vaudou, c'est la cohabitation pacifique.
that one of the main values of Voodoo is the passive cohabitation, that people they live together as Voodoo practitioners, that Voodoo does not see these religions as opposed. People they practice different religions together. That's it.
Et quand cette religion étrangère est arrivée,
And when this foreign religion arrived,
elle a été acceptée
it was accepted.
par le vaudou,
It was accepted by the
les pratiquants du vaudou,
by the practitioners.
leur a attribué des terres,
They were given them
y ériger les églises.
to build their own churches. When these missionaries they came, they had their places.
En prenant le cas particulier
If you take the particular case
de l'Église catholique
of the Catholic Church
à Ouida,
in Iran,
qui est devenue aujourd'hui la basilique mineure,
that became today the minor baptism.
elle a été construite
It was constructed
par la main-d'œuvre gratuite composée des adeptes de vaudou, donc des disciples de vaudou.
It was built by the free workforce of those who were Voodoo practitioners there.
Et comme tu as été là-bas à la plage, les adeptes de vaudou, qu'on appelle les vaudou aussi, donc les disciples en d'autres termes, sont partis jusqu'à la plage, amener le sable marin, donc sur près de 4 km, pour venir là. Et c'est ce sable-là qui a servi à construire l'église.
And then the Voodoo followers, the Voodoo practitioners that are called Voodoo C, that it is in at the time, they helped to bring the sand from the beach to the hinterland where the basilic was constructed, the Catholic basilic. When this
I want to say something right here. The first church built in Ouida, he's saying that the Valdoon practitioners helped build the church, and they built it right across from the main Valdoon temple there to symbolize their concept of acceptance. So that's what he's explaining.
they helped to build with the sand from the Ouida beach.
Sur ces mêmes aussi qui ont puisé l'eau depuis des kilomètres pour qu'on puisse servir de ça et construire l'église.
They also help to bring the water up to the interior, also to help the
Donc, pour répondre au deuxième principe,
Donc, c'est the second principle.
c'est le principe de l'acceptation de l'autre.
It's the principle of acceptance of the other. This is the good principle.
Bon. Donc, s'il y a des questions en même temps, on peut poser. Oui. C'est bon.
If you have other questions, then just go ahead.
The story that is told in this country.
L'histoire nous a raconté ici dans ce pays, aux États-Unis,
After our ancestors who were enslaved people used particular aspects of their power.
donc l'histoire qui a été racontée à propos de nos ancêtres qui ont été amenés par la force ici,
Fight or resist or to free themselves.
donc l'histoire qui a été racontée à propos de ces ancêtres qui ont lutté pour se libérer, donc qui ont lutté pour la liberté ici.
The people who got the bad end of that disparaged those practices or prevented people from getting together under the guise of that was a dark art, a black art, and they used the word voodoo.
And then what? People were enslaved, African ancestors? Donc, ceux qui ont mis en esclavage, donc les Africains qui ont été amenés dans ce pays ici, dans la période de la terre, et ces personnes qui ont mis en esclavage ces hommes et femmes, ils ont mis dans la terre afin de séparer les gens et de faire les maintenir ensemble. Puis les vaudous étaient une religion noire, puis c'était la magie, toutes sortes de choses que l'on a entendues maintenant après la colonisation de la Canada.
So we in this country have a distorted view of that, of the roots of religion. My question is,
Donc on a une vision qui elle est I don't know how to say
Sorry. Can I just pause? There goes the arm. Okay. I'm watching myself in that moment. So when that individual asked the question, he asked it from the perspective of an American judging the tradition, and the question presumed the superiority of Western religions. So I had a moment where the arm goes up and there's a cloud of smoke over my head, if you can see it.
Earlier she said she was the New York.
So I literally had a moment of split consciousness because this is the king of 80 million worshipers. And we were so fortunate to have him to come and speak to us. And I felt that the individual who asked the question had, was certainly within his rights to ask his question, but I also felt that it reflected a lack of understanding.
Can't take those Howard University ones with you.
Anywhere.
So she's one.
Well, I'm a Howard Law alum. So
I'm one.
my point is that if Africa precedes Europe in terms of time, if people first appeared on Africa, and they established their own cosmology. And then by interacting with Western societies, the West then adapts. I won't say usurp, but adapts that tradition to its own use and changes the iconography. Is one superior over the other? No. They both exist with equal validity. And over time, different way showers come forward to demonstrate a truth. So in this clip, the king is talking about because I don't know how good the audio is for our purposes, and I'm not sure that you can really capture the gravity and the enormity of what he's saying. What he's saying is precisely the same stuff that we read in the ancient scripture. So
There's about 6 more minutes of this.
Okay.
And then
Appreciate that.
Donc, on a ici dans ce pays une vision détournée de ce qui est évolué à cause de ça.
So, could you give us a understanding of the origins of Verdun and what's the mysticism or the?
I switched the camera to Julianne because I said she was getting angry. In order to capture.
Et là, on a vu les origines de Vaudou, donc ces origines sémites, le mysticisme autour du Vaudou. Donc, il y a avoir une vue d'ensemble pour mieux comprendre les Palestiniens.
And then we will know and start from there.
If I could add one point, you keep saying we, but in truth, the practice and the adherence to the tradition has transcended time from when we migrated and moved, either forcibly or not. So by saying we assert that there's a universal distaste for the tradition.
Well, I say
This is not true. As a matter of fact, what I would like to point out, I'm experiencing a fair amount of grief right now because I cannot speak to him in our language. We need language that comes from a European colonial time. It's frustrating.
But the point of my question is, what's the origin, so I can get an understanding of that, and then we can deconstruct the problems thereof.
Alors, il demande qu'il aimerait mieux comprendre les origines du vaudou pour pouvoir pouvoir aussi transmettre l'histoire et d'une certaine façon, certaines vérités à propos de ce qu'est le vaudou qui n'est pas l'image qui a été transmise jusqu'ici par les organisateurs.
I just want to say something. To understand voodoo is to understand the traditions.
Well, Verdun, voodoo, and you guys are saying
It's the same thing. It's just a different way of saying it.
so where does it come from Verdun and voodoo?
Well, it's French versus English.
I'm going to post this. You can scroll
Thank
through it
you.
and listen to it.
Thank you.
But I just wanted you to get a flavor for that. And it got heated for a minute, and then it shifted back to trying to get him on message about, his tradition and how it is a transcendent higher tradition, not what's portrayed in the media. And he went on to explain acceptance in detail, how they worship their ancestors, sacred ecology, all those things.
So that's on YouTube. That's your channel?
Yeah. But I want to show you this. This is a naming ritual. So I invited Julianne to a naming ritual back in August, and the woman that was speaking to the left there, for whatever reason, didn't include her in the naming ritual, just kind of omitted her. So I'm always thinking, I said, hey, well, you know what? While we're here with the king, why don't you give Julianne a name? And so it's kind of really took on a life of its own. It's very interesting. To receive a name from him is like being baptized by the Pope. You know, the Pope is called Papa, he's called Dada, same thing.
If I could ask, could you roll it back to where he puts the cowrie shells in
You can't see it.
Well, what are they?
the cowrie shells?
And he reads them?
Yes. Before this takes place, just want to give you 1 second. What he did was to give me the handful of shells. And he asked me to place the shells before my third eye and then drop them. So as I drop them, they formed a pattern, and he's reading the pattern.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Which
you.
brings me to a point. Cowrie shells were currency in Africa. They're sacred, well, West Africa, sacred and used throughout many aspects of life. And also, naming is just not, well, I'm gonna name them after my father. That doesn't work that way. They divine names. And for if they can speak to you on important matters, they do divination. I called the king over there, and he gave me to his wife, who's a queen, and I told her what I wanted. And before they talked back to me, they actually did divination on who I was. Because I was telling them that through a DNA test, it was determined that I'm related to them. But they not only confirmed it through DNA, they confirmed it through divination. Because you can have the blood, but don't also, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will embrace you wholeheartedly as a family member, which they actually have. And I'm going to go over there and visit them. So, on with this. I didn't choose that name. The drum that
Drum that makes noise. What's the name? I like him.
the guy in purple.
I like him both. Like his hat.
Now, this was quite unexpected. This is the actual initiation. And I guess he just intuited that he needed to do that. It was quite unexpected for Julianne too.
So they're like chair.
Yes, he did.
He's programming the water.
Wow.
On est bien. C'est le third time I'm going to oui. On est bien.
You have to respond.
Oui.
You have to respond.
Oui.
On est bien.
Oui.
On est bien.
Oui.
On est bien.
Later on that evening, he asked me if I wanted to get my name when I visit the town where my ancestors are, and I said, no, I'm kind of feeling Jay's a good name for me.
So I just want to say, as commentary, there was a very big moment in my life. I'm an African woman born in America with the genetic heritage of my ancestors going all the way back in time. So to reunite the lineage, even though Ancestry.com tells me that my ancestors were primarily from other parts of Africa with other parts of the world mixed in, being able to trace a continuous emotional, psychological, and spiritual line back to Benin was a huge experience, and I can only thank Dr. Spades for arranging that for me and thinking of me to make sure that that happened. So I owe you again more than I could ever repay.
Now, I can add to that. Heavily involved in ancestral research for the last 2 years, and no African American thinks that they can really, that it's even possible to go back and find your ancestors on the continent. An alum, a friend of mine, Sharon Breland, kept asking me for years to go on DNA tested Africans, where these royal families are now trying to reclaim their families in diaspora. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go on this. So she called me up one night and said, just go on now and do it. So I went on. Because she has been, and they're steadily adding to this data pool. So she's been on it for 3 years. And I went on, I was like, hey, right at the top, yeah, it says royal DNA right there. So, yeah, I looked at that. I looked at my ancestral data. So the largest single chunk of me in terms of DNA is actually from Benin. Now, to put this in perspective, 22 million slaves were conquered and sold by Benin, the Dahomey Empire. 40% of those went to South Carolina, Gadsden's Wharf. And we were actually going to take him to Gadsden's Wharf to do a libation ceremony, but stuff just intervened and we couldn't do it. So to actually know that in my search, I can't go beyond my great-grandfather. I know where they're from, I just can't find that link to what plantation. But here I am, leapfrog back over that to actually where I'm from, the very town that I'm from, the kingdom that I'm from, the very family. And they have a family curator, and the name is Dika. And what's really interesting about this is that the matriarch of that family is actually, actually the woman, the origin of Baldoon is started in Alada, even though Ouiga is the epicenter of it. And this matriarch fell asleep in the woods outside of Alada. And so when she awoke, she walked into Alada and had the revelation of Baldoon. And that's how it came into Alada. So when you die in voodoo, they say that your soul rests in Alada. And I showed him a picture of my father because I wanted him to see the family resemblance. My grandfather looks just like the king. I think I showed you that. Yeah, and so, he looked at my father's picture, which really moved me, and said that he's in Alada, that he's come home. He said, now you have to go and make it official. And I was like, cool, but don't give me a name. That's my family symbol. the Queen sent me these things, and I want to show you this. This is really cool, and that's my 5th generation cousin. This is the Queen. This is my 5th generation cousin. See, he has Down, so he's a prince, and he is the curator of my family line, and he believes that he can almost pinpoint. See, if you have royal blood, you weren't captured into slavery. The king said, get rid of him. He wanted a ship. So this is actually my 5th cousin, and his name is Dika. He's a Da. She's Christian. He's Valdoon, and then I found the need to immerse more in Valdoon. And so far, I haven't seen anything that upsets me or is foreign to me, except they have these little things, I forget what they're called, they look like little bushes, and they dance around during these ceremonies. And I'm like, okay, I know they had a child in that, and then it stops in front of him, not the other one, the king, and you lift it up and there's nothing in it. So there are things like that. They have a python temple. The python is sacred in their theology. Yeah, the python snakes are sacred. They have wisdom.
So to put it in context, Barb and I were talking last night about you tracing your heritage back into the French Huguenots in Michigan, going back into France. So for me, this was a way of connecting the common lineage and healing a wound of feeling stolen, if that makes sense. Feeling that my genetic line had been invalidated somehow. So I exist in this life, and my people exist going back in time and reconnect something that I had been longing for.
Now, in African American spirituality, there are a lot of commonalities. That in the African AME Church, the First Lady, you know what the First Lady is, right? She's the wife of the pastor. They wear the biggest hat, and that's called dead mother, the grandmother. They wear the biggest hat. The ordering of the honoring of the elders in the church, the elder board, very African. The way the church is governed, very African. If you remember when they had the shooting at Mother Emanuel in Charleston, South Carolina, you heard that they forgave the people. Again, that concept of forgiveness, you'll be ostracized, in their tradition, you would be ostracized somewhat, but you will not be totally thrown out of the community, but there's a sense of forgiveness right away, because if you hold it in your heart, you really can't move on with life. So it's not forgiveness because they just have these big open hearts. It's a function it speaks to a function of how to manage life. You know, we here in the West, I think Doc was saying how so many people are dying from pancreatic cancer. Didn't you say something about that?
The pancreas is the little sibling of the kidney and the liver, and basically it's where a lot of, in Chinese pathology, it's where a lot of fear and anger is held, the leftover fear and anger that cannot be shaken. So yes, so in this time period that we're in, a lot of people are getting pancreatic cancer or damage.
So, there's so much more we could say about African spirituality. The reason we focused on Valdoon is because we had a recent experience with the king, and Valdoon is the base tradition that so many other traditions came from. And most scientists are trying to refute the fact that the Egyptian spirituality is not African. It is. It came through the migration, Kemet, and Egypt's not the oldest part of Africa by any means. It came through southern Africa, and I actually have a book that shows the migration pattern for my family. There's a good DNA site called Living DNA, if you guys are interested. It shows you where your family migration happened and how it happened going back as far as 2,000 years. actually translate your DNA along the way. Anybody have any questions?
I have one book reference. An author by the name of Dr. Catherine Ocholonen documents the variety of stories, creation stories from Igbo land, and how they show up in different communities going eastward into Sumeria and then to Egypt. So her thesis is that life and theology started in Nigeria and traveled upward and westward and eastward from the heart of the African nation, heart of the African continent. So her work is definitely worth looking at.
Can you say it again?
Catherine,
With a K or C?
C. Last name is Ocholonou.
And the name of it again?
The book title escapes me. There are several works that expand on the same theme. It's highly controversial, but very well documented.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you if you knew who Regine Romaine is. She's a friend of mine that lives in Brooklyn, and she went on a pilgrimage to Benin and did a documentary called From Brooklyn to Benin. And she does a lot of talks and workshops, and she's come out with a book, like a photo, she's a photo journalist too. And I would like to give you her information, cause maybe, can connect and.
You know what, I'm gonna ask everybody to take a photo of the sign-in list right there, and, we can create.
If you wanna post it on Schoology, it goes to everybody.
What's the link for Schoology?
Yeah, they're on Schoology.
Okay.
And you'll tell us.
And,
Yeah.
you go to Schoology, your other classmates are on there, and soon you're gonna be in study groups. So, I'll post all that. Also, I'll go over I wanted to tweak the curriculum after this meeting, and I'll post all that in the reading list. I believe you already have it.
I do have one question. As having awareness of respect for the different faith traditions, and for someone such as myself, coming into, the seminary, not to say that as a Christian that I'm a minority, however, how do you begin to help someone such as myself to come to the table with others who may have a depth of knowledge of certain faiths or religious traditions that are different than my own, where I don't want to seem like I'm offending anyone because I choose not to involve myself or engage in certain rituals or practices, but at the same time, asking for grace, for permission to allow me to get there. You know what I mean? Like help in my arrival.
I have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
There's a great book.
Julian, let me just say this. Yesterday I said, Howard Thurman said that I always wanted to be me without making it uncomfortable for you to be you. This is sacred space. It's open. There's no judgment. You can be interfaith. You can be this and that. What did Rabbi say? Always this. Always this.
Just in addition to, not.
Always this in addition to.
Right.
So you're not offending anyone, but I also said that you have to have an inner dialogue when you enter this seminary, that you would allow and be open to other people's expressions of faith. It's called an inner dialogue, and you have to work on that. And for you to have an interfaith dialogue, you first have to have an inner dialogue, and when you have an inner dialogue in preparation for an interdialogue, then you have to also be open to the fact that you might be transformed by that dialogue. So very few people, and I pray none, have left the seminary not transformed. And so the transformation is going to take place simply by being exposed to your classmates, by doing the work, and you may find yourself challenged. I had to reframe Christianity. I was reframing it for a long time, but I reframed it in a way that I can still speak from a Christian perspective, but I can include the African perspective as well. Because, well, I don't want to say this again, but as Howard Thurman said, Jesus is a transcendent figure. And if you look for what's right in a faith tradition instead of what's wrong, you'll find these threads that run through all of them, and they connect. And it leads back, in my opinion, to one common thought, one intelligent, divinely intelligent being that I call one source.
There's a wonderful book called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. The author name is Levi. The wisdom and the documentation is that between the ages of 12 and 30, Jesus was trained in Egypt, India, Saudi Arabia. There's evidence that he came to North America. All of the experiences that we would expect someone like him to have, he had to understand all of the faith traditions. Of course, Islam came after he lived, but up until then, every individual Wayshower, whose name we know, and there are millions of names we don't know, came in to bring heavenly wisdom, and he was the beneficiary of that, and we receive from him. So I don't want anybody to walk away looking at me and not think that I'm not walking the path of Christ, because I certainly consider myself to be, for sure. I was raised in a Christian church.
So let's stop it there, take a brief break, and then Gail and Reverend Julianne. Gail and Reverend Julianne are going to have a closing exercise for you. What time?